Greetings, fellow wizard. Today we're working on a bit of a mood piece. I guess this would fall into more of a scale modeling category because it doesn't feature a miniature, well, not so dominantly. There's a tiny cat involved, but I wanted to make a little building. I've had a craving to make a full-blown 40K table lately, but that takes time. So in order to scratch that itch, I started creating this old world tiny home. I had to think about it for a while to create a fun narrative around it, but that kind of came together as I was building it. I'll talk about that in the end a little bit. But I settled on the name, the Watchman's Coop. I'll explain later. But for now, let's talk about first the building, and then I'll be painting it later on with the painter's vision. So first, just a brief overview. Whenever I'm creating a more intensely scenic base, I like to lay out a buffet of ingredients for myself. Mainly the small building. This is a leftover piece from the Fortified Manor kit. That was the inspiration and the kind of the main object of this, but you can see I've gathered some roots, some pieces of slag that I found by the railroad tracks, some coffee stick stirrers to make a sad little fence out of. Yeah, just give yourself some options. You don't need to use all of them, but it's fun to have a variety of items to choose from and feed into your imagination. And once I had decided on all of my ingredients, it was time to start fitting the larger elements into place. You want to work large to small. The most important part at this point is creating that ultimate cork tower. I can glue things together and kind of chop it apart later, make sure there's enough space for the small building and the piece of meteorite. And it's okay if the cork overhangs the base a little bit, but I would suggest carving that to be more flush, to gradiate towards the edge and attaching dirt. Just don't want a piece of flat cork overhang the edge of the base. Personal preference. Then I had some pieces of plaster that I had poured into a piece of Tupperware and dried and broken apart myself. I had to carve into the cork a little bit with my X-Acto blade to make this rough stone pathway, and yeah, I had to take some time positioning things just right so everything was at that angle. Feel free to take some small scraps of cork and push it underneath your pieces of plaster, kind of even things out. It's a little rough just being 3 quick steps between the layers of cork, so carve it down, make space, test fit things, take your time. Now it's time for that sad little fence. I took and clipped one piece of balsa wood, and then using that first length to measure on top of the other lengths, clipped a few more pieces to be similar size. And looking back, I think maybe the product Easy Line would have been better for this. It's something new that I got, and it's not in my memory, in my repertoire. So Easy Line is this elastic string that you can use to create telephone wires, bowstrings, cruddy rope fences. But anyways, I took the more lengthy route and used dental floss. Nice and thick and sturdy, and yeah, just some little shoelace knots around each of these fence posts. Once I had 5 of those bound together, which I was really hitting a rhythm by number 5, I cut some grooves into the cork, planted the fence inside, and glued it in place. Then I got out some plastic card and traced the footprint of the building. I wanted to create a riser that would be nice and flush. My plan is to add a small light to the inside of this, so I don't want any bleeding out underneath. So my first idea was that I'll just set this flat building on top of this flat piece of plastic card. I had to go in and add more texture paste to even things out. The sculpt is not completely even along the bottom there. I don't know, it's an older sculpt, and not casted in the highest quality, so there's some small holes in between some of the bricks, so just had to patch those up. With all that foundational work in place, it was time to apply some fine Wisconsin dirt, as well as some twisty roots. Maybe everything grows crookedly around where the meteorite fell. Looking mighty fine, I'll find a space for the cat to be laying in the sunbeam. There was one step that I forgot to record. I took a file and ran it across the plaster walkway just to smooth things out, general wear and tear. But anyways, let's talk about painting the building. In the beginning, I'll be taking some deep gray from the Warpaints Fanatic line, and just picking out the lower half of this house. You can see it's already been traveling around. But for now, just a nice healthy coat of deep gray. Layer 2, onto the fun stuff. Immediately off to the side, I have a torn up bit of foam. I've diluted it ever so slightly, and I'll be applying a layer of Barren Dune. The idea here, this first layer, is going to be semi-transparent. We're going to slowly build up the mottled layers. I can pinch the sponge together a little more tightly, apply more pressure on this first layer so I get more coverage. You can see the texture that it's giving me. So I'll want to layer this up. There's some spots that might be a little harder to reach. In that case, like up along underneath the shingles there, I'll have to tear at the sponge, make a sharper bit. But this will be our second coat of fun. Let's see, I can probably get away with just, I think this side is dry. Yeah, not bad. It's going to be a few layers diluted down, just overlapping transparencies until I get a nice healthy coat of this Barren Dune. Okay, coming right along. I like that. Next up, I'm going to bring some pure white into play. I've got a new piece of sponge as well. That other one just kept absorbing so much liquid. So yeah, just a switch of the sponge. I also found myself concentrating a lot of the heavier stippling towards the upper area, you know, to kind of gradiate things downwards. So I'll be laying the white down in the same way. Sorry if this tapping is shaking the camera a little bit. You can see, you know, I trailed down, leave it a little bit lighter. I want to do multiple passes of this again, but I certainly just do what makes you happy. It's going to look a little bit different. I'll just tap things in place, just like so. I'll have to do a few layers, I'm sure, but that looks nice. Okay, with that white stage complete, you can see I've been going back and just adding just a thin glaze-like stippling of the Barren Dune. Just kind of wiping it down, and now I'm finger painting. How about that? Yeah, you can see, just want to add back to that gradient. I think things got a little bit bright with that white. Maybe I should have mixed things down, but there are many ways to accomplish the look we're after. So there you go. Okay, and following that, I couldn't resist doing a little split scheme on the house, but painting it much the same as before, this time over a base coat of Brigadine brown, and then stippling in on top of that with some Basilisk red, just like so. You've seen it all before, but why this part is interesting is because I can show you my little tool. I have taped a piece of foam to the end of a toothpick. Ain't it beautiful? There are some tighter areas that I wouldn't be able to reach with my traditional pinched piece of sponge, so that's where the little homemade tool comes in handy. Alright, and following that up, I will take a small amount of Violent Vermillion on my tiny tool, leaving some of that Basilisk red on there as well, thinking I can wet blend things together. Why not experiment a little bit? Yeah, decent. I'll have to see, I have to toy with it slightly, but I like that kind of brick pattern it's giving me. Yeah, I'll just make that a little heavier up top, using, you know, thicker amounts of paint so it doesn't all just wash together from too much moisture. I just want to toy with it, toss it around a bit so those textures become somewhat small to match the scale. Not too bad. Still drying, and I'm having some ideas. I've just taken a little bit of that original deep gray. I just want to reclaim a little bit of this confusion down below. I think it Just needed a little bit more depth. Yeah, just a small, tasteful amount. Some, here on the corners of the building, maybe that paint is chipping away ever so slightly. All right, good. We'll be doing a little masonry next, but I need a custom color for that. I'll be taking black, mixing it with some night sky. It's giving me a cold, pale black. And then a little Great Hall gray to toy around with for the lighter end of things. So on the model itself, I can chop away at some of this brickwork with that deeper blue mixture. And then while it's still drying, let's see if I can just take some of that pure Great Hall gray. I'll just add a small amount to each brick, just like so, and that should give me a slight amount of material to wet blend from. See, I'm just stippling. Nice. Yeah, that'll be the first pass. All right, coming along. Very nice. Just hit everything with a light dry brushing of Great Hall gray. Just pulling up all that texture nice and simple. Just make sure to pull it from every direction so you catch every edge. Just press very lightly over the windows so you don't run over the wall. And that's a dry brush. Stepping right along, I'll add some Basilisk red in with black. Create a nice deep burgundy for the door. We'll slide that into place. Then I'll be pulling together a mixture of Basilisk red, Barren Dune. Give me this kind of dusty pink. And I'll wet blend that into place, just following along with the same gradient as the walls. Just making things brighter on top, deeper on the bottom. I'm sure I'll have to toss a good amount of paint onto this. I want to involve just a little bit of water. Yeah, that gives me this kind of deep, rosy, burgundy colored door. I'm into it. Moving right along, I'll combine some Brigadine brown, black, night sky once again. My goal here is to make a deep, kind of cold wooden tone. That'll be applied to all the visible wooden features. It's a nice, healthy coat. And then by adding small amounts of Great Hall gray to that soupy mixture, I'll go through and pick out all the edges and wood grains. There's a lot of nice texture added into this sculpt, so I want to make sure that I give it its much deserved attention. Yeah, just a couple of colors really. Just a little bit of Great Hall gray and then a little bit more stepping upwards. This Great Hall gray is going to get a lot of work done for me. You can see where that wood is going. Also on the stonework, there's some heavier texture that isn't quite pulled out to my liking from the dry brushing. So just be using very scant amounts to kind of draw on some texture, pick out some of those heavier details. Just kind of raise things up a little bit with some Great Hall gray. And also, now that this door is dry, I'll be taking watered down amounts of that highlight color, that original one that I was wet blending into place. You can see I'm just taking a diluted glaze-like consistency and kind of stippling it in place with a wide-tipped brush. Just very gradually raising things up, as the door creeps upwards. Maybe here and there I'll add a little bit of a vertical stripe. Apply a little bit of wear and tear, a little bit of weathering. For the metallic areas, I've combined some black with some gunmetal. Give me a nice deep wrought iron look. I have a lot of little bolts and details to pick out. yada yada. I do want a little bit of visual interest on the door. I'm sure the door of this building is somewhat special. So let me just take a little bit of true copper and yes, skip over some of these spikes. Pull out every other, well, you can see the pattern. I don't have a name for it, but just add a little bit of visual interest to the situation. All right, moving on to the rooftop, let's first lay down a nice thick layer of Great Hall Gray. I don't move about this in sections, but once you have that gray in place, just taking some black, quickly running it across that seam, the seam of the shingles tucking up into the next row. Just add gradual amounts of black so I get a nice light gray gradation. And while everything is somewhat wet still, kind of has a bit of a tacky quality, take a little bit of army green. I just want to create some irregularity on the roof, make it look somewhat neglected. So just mixing a little green in there, maybe some a little patch of this Brigadine brown. That's all right. Yeah, I just want to work a little bit of that irregularity into the situation. Not bad. I've also discovered that a fine way to hold this building is by just putting my 2 fingers inside. Let's take another dry brushing of Great Hall Gray. Just moving in one direction to pick out the edges of all these shingles. Kind of bury a little bit of the green and brown washy weathering. Getting to some of those final touches now, I'll grab a small amount of that original deep gray that I had base coated with, and here and there, I like to just make the stucco, whatever, the coating of the house flaking and cracking off. I like the sponge work, so I just want to add to that a little bit with some fine lines. Yeah, a little bit goes a long way. I don't want it to be a completely ruined structure. Just a little bit of wear and tear. All right, adding more to the not-so-subtle touches of weathering. I have some army green combined with some black and diluted down so I'll get a transparent result. Yeah, just off the windowsills and certain more dense areas where moisture would be gathering, maybe off of some of these missing chips. Just add some vertical stripes, a little bit kind of creeping up, just like so. We'll go real subtle with it, like a little bit is fine. I'm going to overdo it here because I'm recording the process, but yeah, the same philosophy applies as with the cracks, just less is more. Should be good. Maybe a little gathering at this corner crevice. I like it. Finally, with all of that laid in place, it's bath time. I've diluted down some dark wood speed paint with a speed paint medium. About a 50-50 dilution. I apologize, I always say about a 50-50, but that's just the way I work. I eye things up. But you can see this is it's staying on the thinner side. I just want to add just a thin, unifying tint. That speed paint will be nice for sinking into the crevices. Just making sure everything is connected, so it's got like a even membrane across the surface as it dries. You don't get any tears or anything. Just make sure that's all seated in there. Throw a little extra on top. I like that. Now I'm just letting this sit for one quick moment. I can see the speed paint settling into a lot of those smaller textures from all the stippling, and I like how that's built up. But hello, Mrs. Sponge. Let's just pull some of that up. Again, in just the upper area. Just lighten things up ever so slightly. Just playing with subtleties as always. Very nice. Coming along nicely. I'm just looking at my work, analyzing it, and I've decided that the rooftop is not dark enough, so I'll mix up a deep gray, very similar to the shadow tones from the wet blending before, just some Great Hall gray plus black. You can see me just sweeping it, towards that seam again, just deepening things down a little bit with a glaze-like blend. Then on top of those shingles, I'll combine some speed paint medium, just a couple driplets of grim black, and I've got a large brush, heavy brush load of my speed paint mixture. Just make sure that I press everything into the crevices. This will help to define all those shingles, tone everything down, make it a little deeper in contrast to the building walls. Much better. With the rooftop still drying, it's time for the final treatment on these walls. I'll take some of that army green and black mixture once again and just glaze it down towards the bricks. Create a slightly mossy accumulation. Put a few dabs here and there. We'll go overboard, but yeah, keep it, most of it located down low. The temptation to go high is, well, it's high. But you can leave that upper area alone because, remember the tool? It's still hanging by a thread. Soak that in a little bit of water, the tiniest amount of white paint. And just the mid areas, very, very thin amount of white. Try to add a little bit of pressure behind that. Yeah, that's very nice. I just need a little bit of brightening. After that stain brought things down a little bit. It's very back and forth, but this is fun and easy, so no sweat. Wahoo! For this next step, it's a bit of a victory lap. I want to keep things moving on the tutorial, but I can inform you what's happening. You can see I'm just going back through with all the final highlight colors, all these areas that have been washed down. Just bring things back up ever so slightly. So I've got Great Hall gray on my palette, small amount of white. I mean, I might want to mix that down to match some of these lower ivory tones. But I'll have to make that decision, depending on the area that I'm working on. Also, all the metallic areas are going to get a touch of silver, whether they're brass or rough iron. I want to apply this real spotty and patchily, kind of add a little bit of texture. You can see the color of the handle of my paintbrush has changed color. I use a different paintbrush to highlight the metals because of the flake included in the paint. It can chew your bristles up, so it's nice to have some set aside for your metal moments. And the same can be said about your paint water, but I'm too lazy for that. Okay, moment of fun. You can see there's a little bit more painting to be done on the rest of the base, but there's a reason I left the house detachable. You can see I've added a pilot hole right here for myself, and what I'll be adding to that is this tiny light. All I have to do is screw it together and it will light up. So I want to plant that inside of the house, and I was thinking, do I use a drill do I use a drill or do I use an X-Acto? And I think this way, if I slowly bore into the surface, I can create a nice snug fit. So let me do that. And there it is, little hole bored into the base. Now I've got my cutting mat laid out and a sheet of clear acrylic. I'm just going to scuff it up a little bit with some sandpaper. And to give the glass a kind of greased over appearance, I have a thin layer of burnt umber ink that'll just slide over that scuffed up surface. Oh boy, and there's my yellowed out glass. You can see the edge is pretty broken up because I cut it with a scissors. Maybe this is a little thick for chopping into it with the scissors, but that's okay. That seam will not be visible once everything is put together. Take my X-Acto, drag my blade down, start making some glass for these window panes. Now let's get that little pane of glass inside of the window. Made sure to cut it a little bit larger than what I'll need. And this is going to be a bad angle, but you can see inside there are also some details on the wall. There's a little windowsill, so let's place a dot of glue. I should be able to, oh boy, balance this on my finger and then kind of slide it inside. Just don't want to run it over the glue sitting on the bottom of the windowsill because then I'm going to have a stripe of glue running across the window pane, but look at that. Success. Now I'll have to repeat this 3 more times. Alright, and there's my tiny home. Just one more small step I didn't want to skip over. I'll be taking just a little bit of PVA glue and then just a small amount of some moss that I created from various flocks. Just let the glue absorb up into that a little bit, hold on to some of the moss, and maybe add a little bit more. I'd rather add small amounts at a time instead of overdoing it. But yeah, I'll just be applying a tasteful amount of moss to the structure, and then we can have a look at the finished product. Alright, and thank you for checking this out. This is a lot of fun, and as always, variety is the spice of life. It was something a little bit different, and like I said before, I've been craving to make a 40K table. It started with the scenery, and then I'm like, yes, of course I need a table to put the scenery on, but I want to make some really intense, like, artistic scenery and, you know, things like this little tiny house that I made. But the idea is to take more cinematic photos of my models in the long run. It's nice to have photo props like this available to, you know, stage things and create little scenes. I can see myself painting more pieces of just scatter terrain. I could use more of this medieval themed stuff for the cities of Sigmar or whatever else fits in with it. But yeah, that'll be really fun to get to on the 40K table, and this kind of ignited that flame. So again, a big thank you. Thank you for your support on Patreon. It means the most to me, so hats off to you. If you're watching this on YouTube, consider checking out my Patreon. I add a lot of extra content there. It's well, it's much appreciated. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, and until the next time we meet, remain unchained.